Here's a shocking statistic. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 5 adults, or 46 million people in the United States, experiences mental illness on any given year. This means that you probably know someone or are someone struggling with mental health. Coming up, we'll talk candidly about mental health issues and their impact on the millennial generation. The I Wish You Knew Cafe is open. In a recent study published in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, there's been a spike in depression and suicidal behaviors among young Americans since the mid-2000s. Between 2005 and 2017, the percentage of young people ages 18 to 25 with depression rose by 63%, while the rate of 18 to 19-year-olds who had suicidal thoughts, plans, or attempts rose by 46% in 2017. Take a moment to let those staggering numbers sink in. And in the meantime, let's introduce our panel.
Hi, Christina Jones.
Letitia Austin.
And Will Lash.
All right, so the study I just mentioned identifies a variety of factors causing spikes in mental illness among millennials, like the growth of smartphones, social media, and digital gaming and entertainment. So exactly how are these new technologies harming our mental health? I mean, what do you guys think?
I think the strive for perfection, and social media kind of puts that to the forefront. It makes a lot of young people, and really everyone, you want to be perfect. And we have this false sense of perfection, as well with social media.
Yeah, it also puts a label on it. There was a time when people struggled with anxiety and depression, but they sort of dealt with it on their own. But now, because of social media, they actually see other people who are dealing with the same things, and now they actually have, oh, that's what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what's making it more prevalent, because people are actually realizing that, they
they're not
actually
alone.
know that they're not
they
alone.
don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the awareness factor. Like, yeah, I maybe didn't know that I had anxiety, and now I can relate to other people on like Tumblr. Like, that's where I found out I had anxiety. I was like scrolling through and being like, whoa, everyone's super anxious. So am I. Oh my God. And that's something I'm pretty open with now. But I also think it is not only we're realizing that we have anxiety, depression, whatever, but also social media has exacerbated it, in my opinion. I mean, I know I don't scroll through Instagram because it stresses me out seeing what everyone's doing. It honestly gives me hives just like thinking about it.
But it's also a front as well. People they're putting on a persona that isn't necessarily them. The people who are really dealing with depression are the ones that you most likely think are dealing with depression, because on the outside they give the impression everything is fine. Yeah,
like I'm not going to post on social media me sitting in bed having not left the whole day eating ice cream. Like, I'm miserable because I've done that. Like, I did it last weekend. But I'm not going to post about it. Full disclosure.
Take a look at social media. Sometimes, even like you said, you don't scroll through Instagram because sometimes it is overwhelming. And then you have people who are, that tend to kind of like live these false lives because, like you said, they're trying to put on a persona to make themselves feel better and, gain followers and gain friends. And it's just like so much anxiety towards having an actual social media profile that we really don't even realize. And it's like, I know sometimes for me, I wake up, I'm on Facebook, I'm scrolling through, I'm on Instagram, like, let me see what other people are doing today. But then I kind of lose myself in it without thinking about it. Then I'm like, oh, shoot, let me just put my phone down, put my mind at ease so I can, go about my day.
Yeah.
So,
You know what I can't stand is that cognitive dissonance that we all know. Like, I know Christina personally, and she'll post on social media, and my brain is still like, wow, her life is better than yours. Even though I know, not to say that
even though we know, even though we know she's not really having that much fun.
She's better than me. I mean, we all know that.
I'm like texting you, like laughing my A off with a straight face.
Yeah. So it's interesting how we know that other people are living the same lives as us, but I think our brain just wants to sabotage ourselves.
Well, you're talking about the statistics of suicide. So I remember when I was in grade school, and this was, before social media, and I had a friend whose brother committed suicide, and we live in a small town, and so, that type of thing was held within our little small community. But today, when that happens, everyone knows about it. And so, whereas, and I think that's why the rates of suicide have increased, because people are more aware that other people are actually committing suicide, and it may have not been a thought before, but because that information is more prevalent, you're like, okay, well, maybe that is the answer.
Yeah, I think people do see it as an option, unfortunately.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, though, as far as social media, I believe, because I think it created a platform for people who wouldn't necessarily be heard before, and now it brings awareness and it makes other people more comfortable to speak on it, and it makes you feel like you can relate and that you're not alone. And unfortunately, social media, it has a double-edged sword where, on one hand, you're seeing other people's lives, but on the other hand, you're able to, look at all the companies that have had to issue out new policies and apologies for all the different types of things going on. Just because of social media was able, people were able to use social media as a platform, whether it was a cry for help or just to bring awareness of maybe a company doing something they shouldn't do.
Yeah, there's schools now that are actually putting up, I don't know what the term is, not like a firewall, but they're putting up systems in place to monitor their students' social media activity to identify at-risk youth.
Yeah.
Because high schoolers, I know,
smart.
Good.
because and it actually, I forget what city it was in, but it actually prevented a suicide. A student was discussing suicidal ideations online, and the school was able to intervene and nip in the bud. And imagine if there's a privacy issue there.
And even when with mass shootings, it's been an issue as well. That's the first. That's where we're at now. It's let's talk about mental health. When in those type of situations, even though we know it's an accumulation of things, but mental health seems to be a part of that conversation as well.
Yeah, I just don't think that it's just social media. I think there's the pressures of the generations before us that don't necessarily understand. So that gap in communication and understanding, and then also us thinking that we can handle everything. So keeping everything in and not utilizing the resources that are readily available to us, including like the people that we have in our lives, such as friends or family members that actually are equipped with this, with what we need in order to pull us out of that.
Yeah.
So I want to keep talking about that that note about opening up to people, but we have to take a break. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to I Wish You Knew. So far, we've had an interesting conversation about mental health with each other, but now it's time to bring a professional into the mix. Joining us is Dr. Alexis Moreno, who is a psychologist and host of Wit and Reason on DC Radio. And you're probably used to talking about mental health, Dr. Moreno, though for many people, it's still a taboo subject. Why do you think this is, and how do you think people should be open? How open should we be? Is there a limit?
Yeah. Well, actually, you look at media and you see people starting to talk about it more. So the behaviors are starting to change and people are starting to be more open with it. As far as how much is too much, it's up for each individual to figure out for themselves how much disclosure they're comfortable with. We all have a platform now with social media, so you could use that platform to either open up about some of the experiences you may have been having as an individual, or save that for a more confidential area. It's really up to each person.
Right. Yeah. So I wonder, I'm a huge advocate personally for being open about mental health, especially in professional spaces where I think we're very quiet about that. If my coworker came in with a broken leg, I would say, hey, are you okay? What happened? And they'd tell me, oh, I was skiing, Yeah. But if my coworker is really quiet and doesn't want to say anything, I think a lot of our initial idea is to be quiet and, not want to say anything for fear of bringing it out. But is it so bad to be open about mental health in the workplace? It depends, right? In the workplace, I want to talk about that because there's a line, right?
I know that you have people that you work with, or maybe a boss or someone that you can sort of like, okay, something personal is going on here, but you can't always bring that up because
you don't want to get in their business.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like, there's a lot of people that say I don't come to work to make friends, so that's too personal. But still, we
But they
spend.
bring it to work. That's the
and
problem.
they do.
They bring the
and
personal
then
issue.
also we spend more time with the people that we work with than we do with the people at home.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So there needs to be somewhere, some kind of outlet that can be expressed, because a lot of the pressures that they're experiencing could be coming from work in itself.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you do? You go to HR? Do you go to someone else's boss? Be like,
Well,
what
I know
do you do?
that my company, they have, the health insurance that they have. What is it? The that benefit where
Employee assistance.
yeah, and you can just
so-
call at
yeah.
24 hours if you're
Confidential
experiencing
hotlines.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
a personal issue. I'm
That's-
saying
yeah.
you can't just necessarily call
in the
someone out and be
military-
like, hey, you're dealing with something.
Military,
You're dealing
we
with
had
anxiety.
Stress cards where, if things were getting a little under pressure, we would have these stress cards. And, to me, I think mental health is really important in the workplace because you need to be in the right mindset to get the job done, especially if you have other people's lives in your hand, like social work. Even where I'm at for veterans, I have a case manager who, she does a great job, but her job is to stay professional and to make sure that every client she has, they're mentally, stable.
Right.
So I really think that is important because how are you supposed to help other people, especially if your job is dealing with other people, working with other people, but
And you're
you're
going-
so clouded and your mind is clouded.
Your
I think it's an
self-care.
overall,
Yeah, your
overall
self-care
thing.
and mental health is really important to make sure that you're not experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue, especially if you're serving other people. And as you mentioned, we spend most of our time at work. So what a lot of psychologists are starting to do is go out to the workplace and provide mental health trainings. And then start the discussion with people like, okay, what is our workplace culture going to be? So have that discussion beforehand of like, okay, if I'm noticing that a colleague is looking kind of down, how should I address that? And then having that conversation and that kind of agreement amongst colleagues or even employers and their team about what do we each want and how do we want that addressed?
So how do we talk about the difference between someone who's has the blues and is just in a moment of down, and then people who are actually clinically depressed?
And I'm glad you asked that question because there is a big difference. I mean, everyone experiences anxiety. Everyone experiences stress. Everyone experiences sadness. The big difference between just normal human emotions that we all have and a clinical disorder would be whether or not it impacts somebody's ability to function in life. And so we all have a bunch of different roles and responsibilities. And so if this mental health or emotional experience is getting in the way of our ability to go to work, to go to school, to take care of our children, then that's where you're going to want to make sure that you talk to a mental health professional so that way they can make sure that you're doing okay. And there may be a combination of medications and therapy involved. That seems to be the most effective for a lot of people. Or it could just be therapy, and it doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be every single week and take up the rest, a whole bunch of your time. But it definitely helps get people into action, as far as doing what they need to do to take better care of themselves.
And it's great that you said that because we have a comment from Edward Fund II. He asks, do you guys feel like we all go through mental health challenges? And I don't know if you guys want to, give your own personal experiences, or if maybe you've gone through a situation where you have had a mental health challenge, maybe you suffer from anxiety, or maybe you can just help someone out there that might need, some type of help and some type of support in that manner.
Yeah.
What do you guys
I
think?
100% think
Yeah.
that we all, I don't want to say struggle, but I'm going to say struggle with depression or anxiety or, that whole thing in some capacity. But I think the thing that we need to focus on more is the individual, so the I and how, and what that means to me. So I have experienced, I can confidently say now that I have experienced depression, I have experienced anxiety, and those are things that, anxiety is something that I've thought was made up, like by weak people that can't handle things, and you start like, that's weird, you taking an excuse to take a medication, or you just can't handle, like, you have too much. I that's just what I thought until I was under it, and I was like, hold up, wait a minute, know, and I'm the strong person in my mind. I'm the strong person in family's mind, a friend, so I didn't, want to associate myself with that weakness, but it was just life, you know, and it's the strong people that go through those things more, but they kind of do it behind doors.
Well, there's chemical imbalances,
Oh,
there's
yeah, absolutely.
trauma,
Right.
you know, like I know I dealt with depression as a child, and part of that was trauma. You know, I was separated from my mother at a very early age.
Yeah.
And raised by my grandparents, and you know, I went to live with my dad and my stepmom, literally two people I didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and it didn't come until I got older and I started to piece things together
Yeah.
and realize, oh, now I get why I was dealing with those things as I was throughout my adolescence, and. You know, and then once you kind of come to terms with it, you know, it allows you to better understand why you make certain decisions, what triggers you,
Yeah.
you know, and how your emotions kind of fluctuate through life. So, but that was me. Not everyone has the luxury of actually coming to terms.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
And I
Taking
want to
that
talk
time.
about
That's
that
beautiful.
luxury of coming to terms. That's definitely what we're going to talk about right after this break. We need to take a quick break, but when we continue this conversation, we'll return. Stay tuned. Welcome back to I Wish You Knew. It's time to address a very important issue, mental health within communities of color. In a 2016 report released by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Mental Health, adult African Americans are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress than adult Caucasians, and are more likely to attempt suicide as teenagers than Caucasian teens. What are everyone's thoughts on these jarring statistics? I know, Kiera, you mentioned there are some people online who want to jump in.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions that, you know, I think are really important for us to answer. Kiera Lewis actually posed two important questions. She said, how do we find the resources to help a friend? And also, like, what are ways to help people remove the bad judgment from mental health issues? Like, what are the ways? Like, can we just give them some, you know, a couple of points?
And can we filter that through the lens of communities of color, Dr. Moreno?
I mean, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, I mean, across the board, there's still a stigma around mental health. And then if you start looking at specific cultural groups, you'll start seeing different versions of that, different messages that we received from our family members or from, you know, our place of worship. I mean, it's unfortunate that there is still such a stigma, but doing things like this, you know, in front of everybody online on social media, being more open about your experiences, talking about it more, that's going to help with that process. And then as far as resources, there's this great website called BeTheOne2.org, and that's what gives people tips or resources about, like, how do I talk about suicide prevention, or how do I talk about if I have, like, concerns that a friend is going through something, like, what do I do? And then how do I know where it's like they're just going through some tough times right now, and we need to, like, bring some other people in because their lives may be in danger.
Also, even for the person that's experiencing it, having the tools to know that this is how to identify what it is that you're going through, instead of now all of a sudden I'm getting these migraines. I don't know what that's from, or it's acid reflux, or and you're blaming it on. I mean, you're calling it different things, but you're not addressing what it actually is. And you know, a partial solution or a beginning. You know, beginning steps could be now focusing in on yourself and maybe going to the gym more, taking time for yourself to meditate, and just being still. You know, that self-care piece that maybe you neglected that got you to this place to begin with.
Right.
But, so we're talking about the culture element, and I think one thing we really have to focus on is generational trauma.
Absolutely.
And the fact that, you know, mental disorders are hereditary. And so when you've got a lot of these issues that are never addressed, from generation to generation to generation, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, and then you add then you add society and systematic racism and all that other stuff that intertwine into that, and then you have, we've got a whole website, World Star, that is filled with people fighting, kids in school beating each other up, fighting teachers, and no one's addressing the fact that these kids are going through mental issues.
It shows up behaviorally as very different ways, but deep down inside, there's some other stuff going on. You know, so I mean, it's important to talk about these certain types of things and to take time for yourself, and whatever like communities you're associated with, be that person to advocate for mental health awareness. And if you're noticing that there's some kind of messaging going on that's still stigmatizing, to talk to that person about and educate them about mental health and how it is both nature and nurture. You know, there's some genetic piece. There's also environmental. And so the way that we talk about this is going to have a big impact as well.
Seasonal depression.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Because that affected me earlier this year. So.
It's just being okay.
Winters,
It's okay. How about that? Like, let's start that. It's okay.
And it's not a weakness. Your feelings are not a weakness.
The thing is, you know, in certain communities, it's not okay. You know, like. I was fortunate enough growing up. So I'm part Jewish, and in the, you know, at least in the Jewish community, we have a lot of like doctors and lawyers, and you know, the model minority, which is a horrible, you know, stigma. But it's, you know, that's something that we've achieved. And in that, it's the idea of find a doctor for everything. You have a doctor in your family, you have a family doctor. So whenever like my arm hurts, it's like, you better see someone about that. Right. It's always go to the doctor, go to the doctor, go to the doctor. But in a lot of communities, especially you know, communities of color, it's prey on it, right?
Well, religion plays a big factor. You know, my father's a preacher, so I mean, I know, I get it. I grew up that way, and
Did you?
And so it's you know, it's a lot of times it's, you know, if you're feeling down, you know, you go to the Lord with it, like, you know.
Right, we're told to pray it away.
Exactly. You don't pray for a broken leg. You go to a doctor, right?
Not religious.
Communities of color, we're told to pray it away and let the Lord have it. It's above us now. Or, you know, and we're also taught to suppress everything and suppress our emotions, and you don't need that, and you don't need to take any pills, and you don't need to see no doctor, you know what I'm saying? And it took, you know, a family member of mine almost hurting herself because she didn't want to get help, you know what I mean? Or for me personally, you know, I just remember, and even in the past, just coming to terms with being a homeless veteran, you know what I'm saying? Every day, even to this day, everything I struggle, you know, it may not always be a struggle, but I do believe everyone faces or have to face mental health. And being a homeless veteran, you know, I face mental health every single day, wondering where I'm going to go the next day. And we need to break stigmas, because, you know, just because I look nice, you know what I'm saying? Just because I look nice doesn't mean that I have a bunch of money, or just because I'm here doesn't mean that I have a big house, or just because I am homeless doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent, or doesn't mean that I'm a charity case. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very intelligent, and this is not the end all be all. And it's about your attitude, and it's about, you know, your view on life, and your willingness to not give up, and your willingness to be a better you, be a better version of you, and to continually work on yourself, because this is the human experience. So we're here to experience life. And
but also, like you said, access to affordable health care makes a big difference as well, because, you know, the average person can't just go and spend money on mental health you know, professionals. So
very true.
So I mean, unemployment, you see an association with increased depression, anxiety, of course. I mean, homelessness, that displacement, that not being able to have a secure home to go to, is associated with, you know, increases in relapse for people who are struggling with substance abuse, depression, anxiety. So for mental health, we understand that we're not just in a vacuum struggling with this. There's also those environmental things too, making sure that we have work and employment for people, that we have stable housing for people, food. I mean, we need to have those basic needs met in order for us to also work on our cognition and the way that we're thinking and how we handle our emotions and
a lot of those people,
and literal, like environmental, like sunlight. And,
sunlight, plants,
really
you know.
Can help you, you know.
But a lot of those people dealing with those issues are filled in our prisons too, which are it's a big issue.
Yes, mental health goes.
And I want to let everyone know too, veterans are among the top percentile of groups of people who commit gun violence crimes. So PTSD, among the groups of people suffering from mental health, I'm not saying veterans suffer from mental health the most, but we need to check on our veterans a lot more.
And that sounds like a topic for like a whole other show that I'd love to dig into. But that's unfortunately all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Moreno, for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for watching. We'll see you next time on I Wish You Knew.